And good evening to all of you out there in YouTube land. My name is James Donnelly, and you would normally be entering the Shadow Gallery, but I haven't figured out what to name this yet, because this is an entirely new segment that's going to be dedicated to one thing and one thing only. And that thing is based entirely around this sound. So, now that you know that sound, you know what we're going to be talking about. That's right, 24 Live Another Day. The eponymous adventures of one former government agent and the wacky adventures that he will get into in the interim of this 12-hour event series. It's not quite a mini series, and it's not a full run of a television season, but it's being qualified now as a mini series. So now 24 Live Another Day, of course, is the reappearance of this show's incarnation, and the first one since it ended in 2010. And honestly, the first one that will actually adhere to a specific timeline, which is kind of a first for this show. Now, and I'll get into that in a bit, but let's first talk about the episode. Now, we open on, which is the first time that 24 has ever had what they call a cold open, which is basically we're going right into the program without the following takes place between blank and blank. Events occur in real time. It's the first time the 24 has ever tried something like this. So you're a little confused maybe from the outset that this might not adhere to the full the whole real-time concept of the show, but rest assured that does not play out, because in this cold open, basically what we have is a team in East London, what appears to be just a group of really sketchy dudes. They have found a high-value target, and initially it just seems like kind of sketchy dudes, like maybe the kind of, henchmen or, kind of bad guy terrorists you might expect in a show like this. But flip the script, they're actually the good guys, because they're CIA agents, and they're basically they have found, as they say, a high value target that is just asleep in a place for squatters, essentially, a warehouse. And they roll in a little camera. They see their target wearing a hood, all dark and everything like that, and they, it's like a team of, seems like 6 to 8 guys. They bust down the door, they move in, and they all snap little cameras onto the front of their guns, which is something that I've seen in other stuff, but never in 24, and I'll get to that also in a bit. But as they go around, there is this almost, mystery man, almost horror movie villain kind of guy, or maybe Batman kind of guy, that's kind of picking them off one by, in the shadows, not killing them, but just incapacitating them or knocking them unconscious. And of course, the camera on the gun that has fallen to the ground, we see the man in the hood turn, and as he looks directly into the camera, we are looking back at him. It is Jack Bauer. Jack is back. So This is all, of course, being seen by the head of the London station, the CIA's London station, Steve Navarro, who's played by Benjamin Bratt, who has not aged particularly well. He's looking a little gaunt, I guess would be the best word for it. And there is another young, blonde, rather beautiful CIA agent who is packing up her stuff. And this is Yvonne Strahovski, who some of you might remember from Chuck. She was on tonight's episode of Louie, if you watch that show at all, and she was really awesome on that show. But here she looks like she's kind of packing up her stuff, and she's wondering why Jack isn't using the roof to escape, but rather going into the crowd. And then he seems to be making an escape, but of course he's caught because he didn't use the tactical escape. He just got out. Now this is, of course, after taking down about 4 or 5 of these highly trained CIA strike team fellows. And he's captured and he's brought back to the London station. Now, in the meantime, they have Navarro is communicating with Mark Boudreau, who is the chief of staff to the president. Now, Mark Boudreau is played by Tate Donovan, who was wonderful on Damages, and been, kind of iffy on some of his other projects. But anyway, and he's the chief of staff to President James Heller, who is being reprised. Well, he wasn't the president before, but is being reprised here by William Devane. And he was before. I'm not exactly sure what exactly his role in government was. I don't know if he was a senator or a congressman or something to that effect. But of course, he is the father of Audrey Heller, who was Jack's love in season 5. I think I want to say almost in seasons 4 and 5, when he seemed to try and be getting his shit together, and of course was captured by the Chinese and slowly driven insane. But and that, of course, played by Kim Raver. Anyway, so this character, Mark Boudreau, is now married to Audrey, and he is very aware of the past that Jack has with Audrey and with her father, his boss, the President of the United States. And he's wondering if this is part of some kind of plot that Bauer might be there to do the president harm, because the last time we saw him, back in 2010, he was trying to assassinate the Russian president. He had assassinated Russian diplomats, or let's call a spade a spade. He murdered them. He fucking eviscerated them on a super massive vengeance kick after Renee Walker was killed. I loved Renee Walker. And anyway, so he wants to be very much kept in the loop of what's going on with Bauer, as far as his interrogation, as far as finding out why he's there, if it does in fact have anything to do with the president, and definitely wants to keep this fact away from the president and very much away from his wife. Not because he thinks that she harbors, that she might still harbor feelings for him, but because just the mere mention of his name might set her progress back. Because she's no longer a catatonic. She is now seems to be a fully functional person. However, her father, the president, is not. He seems to have. It's hinted at that he has some kind of basically some kind of brain degenerative disease. They don't say the word Alzheimer's, but something that might be not. It's not dementia per se. It's just he seems to be forgetting things. Like he confuses Franklin Roosevelt with Teddy Roosevelt, and and we see kind of his mental state as it goes throughout the show, throughout these first 2 hours. And of course, we know immediately, as soon as we hear that first thing, that this is going to become a subplot. That that he's having memory issues is going to become a major subplot of this event series. But anyway, back to where we are. So, and I also did forget to mention that Yvonne Strahovski is playing a character named Kate Morgan, who seems to be having to transfer back from London back to the U.S. because no longer as a field agent, because her husband was apparently a fellow agent, and he was secretly selling secrets to the Chinese. But she's the one that seems to be questioning, why would Bauer do these things, and there are things that happen very early on as she's trying to make a point about what Bauer is doing as he's being held for interrogation and strapped to a lie detector, or just basically something that measures his rate of why I can't think of the word other than lie detector, polygraph, something like that. But it's just something more to seems to monitor his vitals, and so that it's something that's a device that they've used in 24 in the past. So they can get a read on where emotion, where they might spike, from heartbeat to brainwave activity, things like that, at the mention of certain things. Now she goes in there, she bursts in there because she knows that this isn't the way that Jack Bauer acts. He can't, he wouldn't just be caught after 4 years. He wouldn't just be caught by a bunch of, by a CIA strike team unless he wants to be there somewhere for some reason. Of course, she does ask a question, what are you doing here? Are you here for something or someone in this building? And of course, something does spike a little bit, and so she gets the read off of that, and she's about to be escorted out of the building, and she takes the taser from the security guard. She shocks him, drags him into the one of the cupboards there, and calls her only friend that's left in this office to find out if indeed there's anybody in the I can't remember if it was called Special Operations or something like that. It's basically their enhanced interrogation unit. It's the place where you go to disappear, which is what Boudreaux wants, which is what a lot of people seem to want as far as Jack Bauer is concerned. Because, if he is allowed to go to trial, then, there's a whole lot of questions that have to come up about, the American government, so on and so forth. But, when we find out that he's there for, when we're first told about this special treatment or whatever team, the team that uses the torture, basically, we cut back to someone who is performing torture on someone else that is in that building, and that person is Chloe O'Brien. So yes, we have, of course, Marilyn Raskob returning as, easily the greatest supporting character in 24's history. It's no offense to the many other characters who have died or have turned traitor in service to 24's plot lines. But she is now part of this kind of WikiLeaks-esque, hacker conglomerate that has just released, 10,000 pages of, something like that, of classified documents to the press. And anyway, so Jack's whole plan, indeed, is to get Chloe out, which means being taken down to special treatment, and he has a plan. That happens to involve perhaps not a Serbian war criminal, but someone, basically a Serbian mobster, I think it was. And this person helps Jack escape with Chloe, of course, after Jack has finally spoken his first words in the first 45 minutes of the show, practically. And I should also mention that after that cold open, after Jack is captured, that's when we get the bleeping, ticking clock. And then we get, the following takes place between 11:06 a.m. and 12 p.m. And then events occur in real time. So that pretty much, takes a lot of the first episode, the first hour to get to. And Jack is very keen on finding out where Chloe is going, but we're not quite sure yet, or why she's going there, or why he's so interested in her going there. He's just telling her to get to someplace safe. In the meantime, then we cross-cut to this drone pilot who is trying to cover this one American and British allied force in Kandahar, and just providing air support for them. And all of a sudden, and of course this guy has a beef with the officer that's on the ground there, because something or whatever, he can't, this commanding officer canceled his weekend leave, he hasn't seen his wife in a while, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. Long story short is that the drone, all of a sudden, seems to take on kind of a life of its own in a very kind of almost Cyberdyne Systems, Skynet kind of way, and then diverts back to, it was flying away from this convoy, now it flies back towards them, it targets them, it launches a Hellfire missile, and 4 soldiers are dead. Including, of course, the commanding officer, and this poor guy is just like, So, and then we have this mysterious voice at the end of a first hour saying, "It's done." As we see that he's looking at the same screen that our drone pilot was looking at. And so, then the clock counts down from 11:59 and 56 seconds to... And then, because Mondays can be good to us, we go into hour number 2. So it is now between 12 and 1 p.m. And there's, we obviously have some fallout from this, this explosion where the drone took out these people. And of course, there is this, well, we're not going to call it subtext because it's very text about drone strikes that are being used by the government. Now, the president has defended them as being a necessary evil as far as eliminating enemies of the United States. Now, the political end of this show seems to be leaning towards a place that's a little bit hazy, quite honestly. It kind of gets lost in the, oh my god, how cool is it that Jack Bauer and Chloe O'Brien are back. But it seems to be going into the direction they are trying to keep, that the U.S. is trying to keep their lease on an armed forces base that they have in cooperation or on British soil or whatever. It's that part of it is so weird and so perfunctory, but it seems to drive part of the narrative of why the president's there and what they're trying to do. So anyway, then then boom, we see Chloe is back at this place, and she's, everybody's been wondering where she's been for the last 3 days. Of course, it's kind of hard to call somebody when you're in enhanced interrogation with the FBI. And so we meet the head of this group, this hacker group, Adrian Cross, who is played by one of my personal favorite all-time favorite supporting character actors, Michael Wincott, who most of you who are watching now will remember from films like The Crow, from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, from films like Romeo is Bleeding, from Alien Resurrection. He's just someone that I love. He's the coolest. I love Michael Wincott. Anyway, so since Kate Morgan was the only one, and I find it interesting that she has kind of a passing appearance to Kate Warner from season 2, and so we basically have another kind of short-haired, beautiful blonde named Kate on the show. But anyway, so she's being reinstated. This is to the objection of kind of the head of the CIA strike team. Doesn't want to work with her because, her husband was selling secrets to the Chinese, and so, very few people trust her. And she's made a good case as why she should be back, because she thinks instinctively much in the same way that Jack seems to think. So, boom, she's on the team, and she's going to try and put him down. Or to get him back into custody, I should say. But anyway, so we're back at the little clubhouse for the hackers. Jack has indeed followed them there with his Serbian mob friend. And so we have, of course, one of the moments that we live for when we see Jack Bauer on the screen is that when he gets to yell, when he gets to demand answers for a question. He's looking for an individual that has worked with this hacker group. Now, of course, Chloe is pretty hurt by all this, because if the stories are to believe, she spent time in prison for basically not telling anybody where Jack went after he left at the end of the show. During the final full season of the show, she refused, she let him escape and didn't let anybody know where he went. So she's, and she's all, of course, she's all gothed out, she's dyed her hair black, and she's looking, she's sporting Docs and all black clothing, and she's very of the hacker scene now, or at least how hackers they think are supposed to look, based on probably, research that's about, based on costume research. It's probably about 5 or 10 years out of date. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that she's definitely in a much different place than when she was the head of CTU. And we're not quite sure what that place is yet. But anyway, so we have Jack busting in there, and because he put a tracking chip in the phone that he gave her to call him if she was ever, to call him if when she gets to a safe place. Instead, he of course just used it to follow her. And he's no longer sporting one of these. Now this, as you may recall, this is since season 5, this has been the Jack Bauer special. This is the Heckler & Koch USP 9mm compact, which is a very nice gun. But he decided to trade up for the new model, which is the Heckler & Koch P30. See? So yes, neither of those are real. They're both airsoft weapons, so don't worry. And of course, he confronts Cross. He just can smell snake oil all over this guy. He does not buy what he's selling. And he knows that something has really gone wrong with Chloe because she's just not quite herself. As he says, some of the anti-government stuff that she's spewing, he knows is putting lives in danger. So, this is all, of course, leading to. I'm sure that we'll get more backstory on this, and now, of course, we have Boudreaux freaking out about Bauer's escape. Everybody's freaking out about Bauer's escape. But they can the phone they took from Chloe, they can find they find a SIM card in it that it was maybe bought with a batch of burner phones, which for a professional group of hackers seems to make no sense whatsoever. But this is a show that has historically sidestepped logic in terms of moving the story forward, so we can forgive that. So we have, Kate Morgan and Navarro, they're trying to reestablish where Jack and Chloe might now be. And this one person that Jack is looking for, Adrian Cross is able to find a location for him. And again, Wincott, just playing this role wonderfully sardonically, gives him an address, and that he's basically in the protection of a rather brutal drug dealer they call Basher, but his real name is Bashir. So we have our first, non-white potential fatality. But anyway, it doesn't. You can scratch that from your memory. But he's going to leave and just get out of everybody's life because Jack, knowing who he is, he knows that he just needs to do this alone. He has been on a lonely road ever since he left, and has always kind of been on that road, but he's always had somebody behind him. And for a long time, that somebody has been Chloe. And Chloe wants to be that someone for him again, even though he's betrayed her already, and doesn't really understand what has happened to her. But neither of them know what's happened to each other. So, I mean, it's kind of... They're both... I think this show obviously needs an opportunity to have them connect again, so in order to provide some kind of tactical support, Chloe's going to going to hack around the block that our bad guy, our drone hacker has holed himself up in. And then we cut to the drone hacker, and he's got this, sexy little blonde, like Eastern European chick who is, all about, wanting to get with him, and he's busy doing his work, and he's communicating with this woman named Margot, who is played by Catelyn Stark herself. Michelle Fairley is kind of the woman in the dark, the woman behind the scenes, someone who might be in charge of whatever conspiracy that they might be looking at, but obviously she is looking to purchase this device that has been used to take over the drone and blow up people. So he's trying to get that deal together, and he's going to, hoping to, make tons of money off of it and bring his little, Eastern European mail order bride or whatever to Greenland to sit out what he believes essentially is going to be World War III. Because if the American president, if the president of the United States is assassinated on on foreign soil by a drone, well, who fired the shot? Fingers are going to start getting wagged, and eventually the whole world is going to be thrown into conflict. Now, I don't know if they're students of history on this show, but I mean, well, there's never been an assassination on foreign soil, but I mean, they could have pretty easily gone to war over, Kennedy, maybe, because they obviously believe that the Russians were involved and everything like that. But anyway, so this, it seems like, again, it is somewhat of a barely viable plot. And then of course we have our young drone pilot who is being interrogated. He's swearing up and down they didn't do it, and there's all this incriminating stuff on a message board that he uses where he badmouthed his superior officer that died, and so on and so forth. And so we have that, and that this key that he uses is kind of a data key, to log into the drone and pilot that. That has evidence that he did do it. So again, all this stuff that has kind of back-channeled, maybe through this gizmo that that our little hacker guy has invented. Maybe that's all part of what this device can do to make it look like the actual pilot did do all of this stuff. And of course, this is all unfolding while the president is meeting with the British Prime Minister, who's being played by Stephen Fry, who we all know and love. And but he has maybe about 3 lines of dialogue in the show. When you get someone like Stephen Fry, don't you think it's a good idea to maybe give him some screen time? I mean, I know that this is Jack Bauer's show. That's the crux of it. But you don't want to waste Stephen Fry. And while this, somewhat congenial meeting is taking place, that's when, of course, all this information about the drone strike is disseminated. And President Heller wants to tell the British Prime Minister before he finds out from his own people. But of course, when he turns around, he's already being told by his own people. He kind of gives that look, and then he walks out of the room away from the president. So what Audrey and Mark are now going to do is they got to try and prepare what they're going to have the president say, and the president wants to speak from the heart. He doesn't want to, have a prepared speech and everything like that. He wants to go in front. He wants full transparency. He wants to give the soldier over to the British authorities so that they can question him as well, so that there'll be full transparency across the board on this investigation, or else they could use that against the Americans. They can lose this lease. Again, it's so, like, really? A fucking lease? Why? Why is this even something that is driving this show? But again, like I said, it's 24. It doesn't matter, because all it's about is about getting from point A to point B, even if getting from point A to point B looks like a fucking EKG. It's like of, someone who has, who's going into VFib. Heart rate's just all over the place, because it does, all of the lines, many of the lines do tend to intersect by the end. So now we get Jack. He's gun in hand, ready to go up against these, this drug dealer and his thugs to get to this guy. And in a great moment, one of the CCTV. Now, of course, this is Britain. There are CCTV cameras all over the place, thanks to Maggie Thatcher. And I guess people just got used to them. Nobody ever really thought to take them down, even though, Great Britain seems to be getting closer and closer, or is maybe already past Orwell's vision of Big Brother in 1984. But anywho, anyways, there's a great moment where Chloe blacks out one of the CCTV cameras behind this building where one of the sentries is standing guard. And the next time the camera comes up, you see him, he's hanging by his fucking neck. I don't know how this happened quite as fast as, in real time, but apparently Jack found the time to, Chloe blacks out the camera, and he found the time to essentially string him up about 3 feet off the ground and whatever above him. Although, if movies and television are to be believed after all, then that's probably possible. But the whole point is that Jack Bauer is a fucking badass. And you do not want to mess with this dude. Ever. Because, Brian Mills in Taken is a fucking pussy compared to Jack Bauer. But so many action heroes are pussies compared to Jack Bauer. Because this is a guy who's died at least twice during the run of this show. His heart has actually stopped. And both times he's come back to life. So, he's been shot any number of times, of course, and he's shot here in this, because we do have this great exchange where he actually goes into the drug dealer's apartment, and is demanding that he be turned over, and the guy Basher is like, well, why should I do that? And he's like, well, because if you because he's holding this, he's holding one of his guys essentially as a human shield, and I'm not going to bargain for that guy's life. It's like, no, you're basically bargaining for your own. If you let him go now, you'll be able to walk out of here probably unharmed. And when that comes out of Jack Bauer's mouth, you better fucking believe it. But of course, no one ever listens to Jack. Not the bad guys, not the good guys, nobody. Nobody listens to him. Except for maybe... No, there's nobody that listens to him. Because if everybody listened to him all the time, the show would be called 1 instead of 24. Because that's how many hours it would take for Jack to foil the plot. Maybe 2. So anyway, then we have shootout, stabby in the apartment. Of course, the guy and his girl, our hacker dude and his girl, because I can't find his fucking name anywhere now. I would call him by his name. And then out, and of course, while he's chasing them, this is when the CIA is closing in on Chloe and Jack. They get out, some gunfire is exchanged, but not actually provoked by either Jack or the CIA. But of course, there always has to be a deus ex machina when Jack is surrounded and about ready to be taken down. Somebody always has to do something stupid. And of course, it's this drug dealer who can see down below that there are about 7 or 8 guys that have their weapons trained on Jack, but he decides to start firing at Jack anyway. Because apparently it's one of those alpha male deals. So Jack is able to slip into the parking garage of this block. And they, this team, this strike team led by Kate, takes out, at least appears to take out take out Basher. But of course, this guy and his girl are getting away. So of course, creeping around the dark garage, Jack grabs Kate and kind of almost politely asks her to put her gun on the ground and to turn around. Then, of course, the politeness ends where he kind of slams her against the back of the car and basically tells her, you're chasing the wrong person. I have intelligence that there is going to be an attempt on President Heller's life. And, his whole idea here, because in an earlier scene, Chloe does ask him, what do you think's going to happen here, Jack? If you do end up saving the president, what's going to happen? You think you're going to go home and get to see, Kim, who thankfully is not credited in this series, so we probably won't see her, because when we see her, bad things start to happen. Plot-wise, anyway. Not that I don't love seeing Alicia Cuthbert, but this show has always been somewhat weird with Kim. Cougars. Anyway, so, long story short, she of course tries to escape. He says that was a bad move, and he headbutts her just to stun her, puts her out on the ground. He escapes. Chloe is hotwired a car. So again, she's a much different person than who we remember, and this is a good thing because you can't have your characters become stale, because once they become stale, they become boring. Once they become boring, then there's no surprises left for anybody, and the show basically collapses in on itself. So you have, of course, during the because again, Mark and Audrey are kind of trying to talk the president out of doing this, impassioned speech before, I'm assuming, the House of Commons, Parliament, whatever, where, they're, again, this whole mock thing, and Mark's character, Mark is really pressing him for answers, and he's, and the president's giving, his best, and of course then he forgets how many people were actually killed in this drone attack. He says 3 instead of 4, and then he doesn't quite remember the name of the fourth soldier that died, who he just a minute ago said was, his name's going to be in his heart forever. So that's, well, okay, so that happened. So again, we're questioning, is the president competent to stand office? What kind of disease does he indeed have? Do we need to put a label on it? Anyway, so it ends with, so the hacker guy, his little machine, and the girl have gotten away. They are, and this guy's firmly under the belief that Jack was there to kill him on orders from Michelle Fairley's character. But of course, we know that's not true. So he's going to try and find another bidder, another buyer, to sell it to. And then, he's telling all of this to the girl, who, he's in a pub, he goes to take a leak, he brings his thing with him, and, she slinks up behind him in the bathroom, all sexy-like, and wants to have sexy time with him, but of course ends up putting a fucking knife right in his ear, killing him, because we knew that was going to happen. And, she grabs the case, leaves the body, walks out, takes off a wig. She's got a nice long head of red hair. Throws away the cheap, trashy. I guess, I don't know if they sell that in stores as the, trashy, European mail order bride wig, but essentially that's what it is. And she makes a phone call, and of course this phone call is to Michelle Fairley. And which she explains, what's happened and what she's done, and she then tells this young woman to come back home, and you know, basically, come back home to mommy. So this is Michelle Fairley's daughter that has just, pretended to basically be this guy's, has basically been this guy's fuck toy for a little while, assuming probably a long while, because if he wants to leave for Greenland with him, or if he wants her to leave to Greenland with him, one would have to assume that that they've been involved for more than just a couple of days. So there's no denying that this wasn't a really fun 2 hours of television. But like everything with 24, if you start thinking about it too long, you're able to dissect just what the hell is your inability to dissect just what the hell is going on and why certain plot lines were even introduced in the first place. I mean, this could have been anything but, some strategic location that the British are leasing to the United States, and I mean, it's like, why is that a necessary plot point? I mean, they could have literally thought of anything else that just might have been just a tad more interesting than a fucking lease. I mean, come on. I know this is high pressure politics and this might be very well and good, but it just seems like such a piddly little thing. And I'm sure it's important in reality, but this is television. Okay, this is 24. Okay, this needed to be something with more urgency and, for the political aspect of it. But I guess that part is not nearly as important now as we have, these drone deaths. We have 2 Americans and 2 British killed by American drone, and there are, dozens of people protesting outside where the president is staying against drone strikes and so on and so forth. So let's first talk about the problems, and then let's talk about what was good. Many of these are personal. Now, the one thing that seems to be nice so far is that I'm not getting a real vibe of this is the mole from Tate Donovan's character. Not getting that. Getting that he's probably a somewhat duplicitous, politician who is honestly seems to have the Heller's best interests at heart. But of course, we could have said that about Alan Cumming and Alan Cummings. No, Alan Cumming. No. It wasn't Alan. It was something. It was another first. Whatever. Who I'm from season 5. Logan's chief of staff. His original chief of staff. And of course, Reed Diamond's chief of staff. I mean, yes, they seem to be beholden to their president, but only in the most kind of profane way. That they are looking to just extricate them from these extra legal things that the president seems to be doing. Walt Cummings. That's it. Thank you, brain. I know that Alan Cumming is the guy, of course, who played Nightcrawler and is a wonderful actor. But anyway, so I guess that's actually one of the good things, is that we don't right away get the sense that, yeah, this guy is going to be the scumbag. Because, he's the one that's married to one of Jack's great loves. Bullshit. His great love was his wife. Then his next great love was Renee Walker. And I so dearly wish that Renee was still alive. I wish they hadn't used her as kind of Jack's motivation going forward in season 8. As far as, his spree of revenge killings. because again, it goes back to the the age-old argument of a woman's death, meaning that it's the man's impetus is to commit these acts of violence to avenge his fallen love. Now, of course, that's a classical theme throughout literature from from the beginning of time. But we're trying to get into a more enlightened area, and I mean, 24 has had no shortage of strong female characters, but when the chips come down, they are either murdered, they're moles, like Dana Walsh, or of course Nina Myers, or they're Chloe. That's that's ultimately really it as far as the strong women in 24. They're all either dead, or they were moles that were murdered by Jack, quite brutally, I might add. And then there were, and then there's Chloe. That's really it. So so Kate Morgan, definitely not going to be a love interest here. She's just she just seems to be. I mean, this could be maybe kind of what 24 needs, is another strong female character that doesn't get killed, that doesn't fall in love with Jack, and that is just not Chloe. So this whole kind of psychotic thing with basically a mother kind of whoring out her daughter, unless she meant the whole mommy thing figuratively. I don't think she did, though, because it seems like they'd go down that road here, to get to acquire this technology. Seems a little bit like, yeah, that's pretty fucked up. That's like, I mean, she's like brought an element of Game of Thrones into 24. And so, not that I can't really recall an issue where this show has done something quite like that before, but it's probably not been too far off. I don't know, I'd really have to pour my brain out and think of another situation like that. And another problem, of course, right off the bat is Audrey. I hate Audrey. I've always hated her character. I don't like Kim Raver. I think she's a very blah actress. She has this kind of, as my brother once put, and I found to be accurate, a very kind of elfish quality to her looks. I'm not saying that she's bad looking. It's just that she has, this very wispy frame. It seems like that she's like the half sister of Galadriel or something like that from Lord of the Rings. So again, it's just she's just one of those actresses, quite honestly, I could never really get behind. I never really liked her in anything that she was in, and I didn't really care for her as Jack's kind of betrothed either. But whatever, she's there, and I got to deal with it. So for the next 11 weeks, so William Devane, he's getting up there, and you could really tell that he's given this role his all. But there's no shame in saying that you've lost a step. And William Devane has kind of lost a step or two here or there. And, but, I mean, he's good. He's not problematic, really. It's just that this plot that they've wedged him into, sometimes you're only as good as the writing of whatever it is that you're doing. And I do firmly believe he's doing his best. I like Strahovski as Kate. I think that's a good character setup there, even if it is a little, she's already kind of like Jack to start off. I mean, one of the first big things that we see her do is, tase a is tase a CIA security guard, and the fact that she's just, oh, well, here's your, here, you're reinstated. No, we're not going to throw you in we're not going to throw you in one of our cells because you've assaulted a member of the staff here just because you were right. But again, sidestepping. That's what 24 really is about. And I'm sure that the torture will come down later. I've argued that many times that people have made too big of a deal out of the torture on this show. I mean, there's been an entire season, which was season 7, that was devoted to prosecuting Jack Bauer for the torturous acts that he has committed during his time as a federal agent, and him arguing that the intelligence that was produced saved a lot of lives. Now, people who say that this is a show about torture and it condones the use of torture, that's basically akin to saying, well, Zero Dark 30 condoned the use of torture because in that film, that torture did lead to actionable evidence to find out, or to actionable intelligence, which led to eventually to the killing of Bin Laden. So the torture that's been in this series has been usually one of two types. It's been Jack torturing someone to get information out of them that in many cases does prove to be helpful going forward, or somebody else torturing somebody else, and that torture is looked at as bad. So there's a weird dichotomy looked at that's dished out as far as the torture in this show is considered. But torture in this show, to me, has been very akin to the kind of torture that existed in films like Dirty Harry, where you see, where you see Harry Callahan step on, the 44 Magnum slugged leg of the Scorpio killer to find out where the girl is, and then everybody's screaming about that guy's, Miranda rights, his due process, and all of that element comes into the film. He's effectively, at the end of Dirty Harry, he's effectively become a vigilante and no longer a cop, which is why at the end of the first Dirty Harry film, he tosses his badge into the water. But that film was so big, well, let's make a franchise, so he had to come back. But anyway, we have, again, it's that kind of wish fulfillment. We as civilized people don't think ourselves capable of doing this type of thing, and we probably wouldn't. But, our lizard brain wants justice, sometimes no matter what the consequences are. And that can work, and it's not, there are very few shows that are free of this sort of thing. We want the bad guy to pay. We don't care if he's been unjustifiably killed or brutalized. We know that they're bad guys, and we know that we want them to pay. So, again, to call this a show about torture is to do it a disservice, because it's an action show. At its heart and soul, this is an action thriller that is surrounded by political theatrics, really. I mean, it's, all the political subplots of the show do tend to grate on you after a while. And when I read one review from the AV Club, they say, Jack is back and in fine form. Unfortunately, he brought a lot of what can bog down 24 with him, and that is very true. Because when it gets into the political stuff too much, and there's too much time spent away from Jack and his supporting cast, that takes away from what's cool about the show, what's fun about the show. But when Jack Bauer's on screen, man, you're just like, oh yeah, we like what we see, because he has that glower, that intense stare, which is usually basically it's the stare that you see is the last thing you see before you die, and and that comes into effect a couple parts in this first 2 hours. Of course, Marilyn Raska in fine form, as always, as Chloe. I'm very looking forward to seeing where her arc goes and how her arc and Jack's arc ultimately intersect, because you can't have these two apart for too long, or else the show will start to lose momentum. So, one of the things that I thought was really cool at the very opening of the show, how you're watching on a split screen of all of those agents going in with their cameras on their guns and everything like that. And so it was literally like they pulled like this metatextual thread out of one of the visual conceits of 24 and actually put it there for all of us to see, that all of these things that we're watching on this screen are in real time, and it's on this split screen, while the show itself is showing you a split screen of, well, this guy's looking at the monitor, here's the monitor itself on another screen. I just thought that was just a really kind of neat little kind of thematic homage, if you will. There seemed to be some artistic liberties that were taken there. I don't recall the show ever really doing anything like that before. I'm sure they have in some way or another, but and even the scene where with the surveillance cameras that Chloe's hacking into, again, we're seeing a split screen on a split screen. So I thought that was neat. But anyway, on to Kiefer. Kiefer, awesome. I mean, this is the role that he was born to play. We all know it. He's never done anything this good. People will say, about season 5 of the show, which is easily the best season of the show. They'll say, well, it didn't deserve to win, the best drama Emmy, and Kiefer didn't deserve to win the best actor Emmy, because it's just not that type of show. Well, it was that season. That was a great season of television. So, all in all, you have many of the elements that make episodes of 24 great. And you have all of these things that also do bog it down. So as far as a score for this week's installment, this 2-hour premiere, I'm going to have to give this a 4 out of 5. Kind of a soft 4, because, again, there's a lot of extraneous stuff that we know will lead somewhere, but for right now, we do have to kind of take it on faith that it will get better. But there is always, with 24, there's the possibility of getting worse. But usually whatever we have going on with Jack will get better. And I do like that, he feels kind of this debt of honor to the Hellers, which seems to be, right now, kind of a singular motivation to stop this assassination attempt. But also the fact that, a lot of people could die if this plan comes to fruition. Michelle Fairley, she's barely on screen, so you can't really comment on how well or how poorly she did. We just know that she's there. So, all in all, an entertaining 2 hours of television, as 24 usually is, and a fine comeback to form for, the aging Sutherland, who's now, I think, 47. Certainly not old, certainly not too old. I mean, fuck. I mean, you got, Liam Neeson's out there, and he's, over 60, and he's still doing this shit. So, why can't Kiefer Sutherland? Just as long as he keeps in shape, that's all that matters. And as long as he stays, the super badass that Jack Bauer is. Because that's what the show is really about. It's about Jack Bauer, badass, practically invincible, super, well, he's not an agent anymore. He's more of he's just more of a vigilante. He's like Batman, but with a gun. He's more like the Punisher, I guess. Maybe. So let's leave it on that note. So I will be doing this weekly. Every Monday night, you will have a new installment of a view into the next hour of 24. So next week, we have 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., and I'm looking forward to that. I hope that you're looking forward to it too. I know that this has been longer than a single episode of 24. And I know this has been spoiler heavy, so I will make sure to put that in the the title bar. But I hope you've enjoyed it. If this is your first time here, subscribe. If you want to see this on a weekly basis, please subscribe. Love to see you come out. Love to see what you have to say about the show, what you think is going on, what you think worked, what you think didn't work, so on and so forth. And we'll see what kind of response this video gets before we go on to another one. So I'll probably still do it anyway, to be perfectly honest. So we will see you next week, and like I said, I'll have determined a name for what I'm going to call this particular vlog series when I'm done. So until then, I'm James Donnelly, and take care, and remember, the clock is ticking.